You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This isn't a blood hole. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I am your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network that has a whole list of other bat-related shows that also like to dive into other nerdy subjects that all of us, headlined by Peter Arvera, love to frolic about in our free time. If you like what's going on with the show and you want to help support the show, you can do that on patreon.com/the Batman BC as well. Now, Happy New Year. We are in 2025 now, and this is the first episode of the new year, and I'm celebrating this new entry becoming up on the 5th year of the Batman Book Club already.
Wow.
Yeah, you heard it right there. My guest, he wasn't on at all in 2024 because
That's not true.
He was on 8 times in November of 2023.
Seriously?
One bad month. You heard his voice. The
Wait, hold
biggest outside of me, he's the biggest Long Halloween fan that I know. Paul Hermann from the Comic Binge.
Hi.
Paul, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Ryan.
Now
Okay,
let's get down to business.
hold on a second, really quickly.
Yeah.
We didn't have any episodes released in 2024 for one. Yeah, you're right. Damn. I equate one bad month with 2024. Is that weird?
I know it's crazy, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, November of 2023, we did one bad month. You and I did the work leading up
We
to
did.
that. I was very proud of what we accomplished. We're talking about
hell
8
yeah.
books over 8 episodes. Anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about, just go back through the history. I can pull up the episode numbers even.
Do it. Well, while you're doing that, let me just say that was such a crazy idea that I had. I didn't even, I really honestly thought, I think I've said this on the show before, I'll say it again. I honestly thought you wouldn't do it. You'd be like, I don't want to talk to you for 8 episodes. Like, whatever. Like, no one wants to hear you talk. You're like, you know what? I'm into it. I'm like, hell yeah, dude. So the fact you went along with it, like, it really, one, impressed me that you want to talk to me for that long. And then 2, the fact
it wasn't consecutively. Like we did it over time.
Well, but like the fact the fact you took time out of your life to make this ridiculous idea that I have for your show. Like, let me pitch your show, Ryan. Like, that's the awesome.
Well, I forget how we even started. Like, I started talking. I think I honestly now it's been so. First of all, episode 172 through 179.
Okay.
All November 2023, one bad month, and all of them are every one bad day book that DC did. And then Paul and I ranked them. I think we ranked them at the end, and then you did a comic binge on one bad day as well.
Yeah, with Javi and Chris. Yeah,
that's right. Both piles of the Batman Book Club.
Yeah, both. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't remember how you and I even got into talking about it, because it's like it's not like you said, hey, I'm going to come on your show. This is what we do. Because then I'd slam the door shut on you.
Well, right.
Don't you dare tell me what I'm doing on my show. Don't you dare.
No,
but it didn't go down like that, because you and I talked to each other. We text each other, like all those sorts of nerdy conversations. And it did come up, and you were like, I've got this crazy idea. Hear me out.
Yeah, I think my original idea was, I think it was your idea to do it. I forgot the original pitch, but you actually pitched it differently, and I'm like, that's perfect. And that, my friends, is what we call collaboration.
That's right.
And that's something that I love working with someone like Ryan, because I immediately know like we disagree, we can do it in a very respectful way, or how about take your idea that sucks and make it better. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Like, that's exactly what I appreciate.
Your idea didn't suck, Paul.
Well,
maybe people don't like us talking as a unit. So to expect them to put in 8 hours of listening in 1 month of us talking was like, I don't know. And so then I tried to do a capper of like, maybe it can be YouTube fully. And then those, I never ended up getting the editing done to put those on the YouTube
I don't
channel.
blame you.
Probably won't ever happen
Yeah.
either. And then it's like, let's try and cap it at like a half hour and not like go really in depth. Like the
Right.
shortest
Yeah.
one we had was 38 minutes. All the others were like 50. Can't help it. We can't
We
help it.
do that was impressive for us. If you have
Yeah.
to, you have to know, like especially me, like, Ryan. I know you can talk like the best of them too, but I feel like I am like the ultimate. We'll make everything that's supposed to be a half hour to like
Don't
45
you
to an
dare
hour.
think that you're gonna cap Paul Herman with a
Yeah,
time limit.
you can't. It's
It can't be done.
but we did a good job. I thought we
I
did a
was
good
happy
job
with it at the end.
Yeah, no, I thought I was very proud of it. So anyway,
And I actually do think that like they are ones if somebody down the road wants to revisit one that I could be like, I know Paul and I covered it, but I think if we wanted like we left enough meat on the bone
mhm.
to, for later if somebody wants to
If
call a
someone wants to
certain
do
book
it,
too.
yeah.
But
But
we
I
didn't
think
just barely glaze over it either.
no, I feel like the way it worked out, and we'll stop talking about it after this, I promise.
No, that's
But
what this episode is.
yeah, exactly, right. No, but the way I think it worked, we wanted to read it in the context of the way they presented it, which was consecutively.
Hmm.
And I know you and Peter kind of talked a little bit about it, but I really wanted to
He
approach it
frolics,
from
by the way. I don't
yeah,
know if
he
you knew that.
does. I
Okay,
love you,
carry
Peter.
on.
But like the thing was, I thought it was cool to look at it from a perspective of like ranking them and like because obviously you're not going to connect to every single one. Like it's going to be an impossibility. And I really
Yeah,
wanted to approach it from which ones we connect to and which ones we disagree with and which ones we could talk about that. That was my whole, which we did was
sure.
great. So it'd be cool when someone eventually down the road could say like, "Hey Ryan, I really want to do like the Bane episode where I really want to
Hmm.
go in depth on that," and you could like spend a whole hour just going in the nitty gritty with that one. Whereas we just did pretty much like, here's what they present, like how we compare that to the other ones. Like it's a lot
Yeah.
different. So like you're right, we left a lot of on the table for each story that you wanted that people could like go back to. So yeah, super. But yeah, I thought it was still fun to do, and I appreciate you hearing me out on
That's
doing that in the first
that's
place.
our pitch, everybody. Go back to those episodes and listen to the our one
Yeah.
bad month.
One bad
Uh,
month.
it's what do you want to say? It's and because Wayne Campbell says in Wayne's World, he's like, so it's not just a clever title or a
No, it's
clever
not just a
name.
clever name. Yeah,
It's a bad month. It's a bad month. If you don't like me and Paul together, oh, it's a bad month.
you just won me over with that line. But that's one of my favorite lines to say. When people say,
Um,
tell me a ridiculous name, I go, so
yeah,
it's not just a clever name. I,
yeah.
I always say that. So
The shitty Beatles, are they any good? They suck. So
suck.
it's not just a clever name.
It's so good.
One of my
It's
favorite
such a
comedies of all
it's
time.
so amazing. All
So
right,
excellent. All
go
right.
ahead.
So I didn't list at the top, but it's in the title here but this is episode 223. Yeah,
Oh wow,
223
man.
already here in 2025. And Paul Herman and I are talking The Batman First Night. So Paul,
Yes.
this book, it's a rather recent one, obviously came
Yeah.
out in 2024, written by Dan Jurgens, as
Jurgens.
Peter Rivera would say, Dan Jurgens, though, with art by Mike Perkins. It was released physically in the black label oversized format, which I love that format.
Yes. Amen.
It was also released digitally. It was in November collected and released in a hardcover. It's also on
Mhm.
the issues are on DC Universe Infinite, and also the collected hardcover is on my favorite app of all time, Hoopla.
Amazing.
Uh, let me read a quick, or no, let me ask you, which version, Paul, did you read for this?
Well, I bought the individual issues physically, the
My
oversized.
man.
Yeah, like I had
Right.
to. Um, yeah, well, we can get into that in a second, but yeah, the pitch really won me over.
Hmm.
And Dan Jurgens obviously, and to be honest, I wasn't planning on getting all three issues. I was literally going to be doing like I didn't put it on my pull list until I got the first issue. I'm glad I did, but I told my comic shop, hey, can you put the first issue in my box? And it sold out pretty quick. So I was very
Hmm.
thankful. I was smart. I did that. But yeah, I was like, I wasn't planning on, I didn't know how, I knew I was going to read it eventually. I just didn't know how. So I was like,
Sure.
I'll get the first issue, see what's up. Cause these are expensive issues. They're not cheap. And, but yeah, I ended up buying all three. So
My
there we go.
man.
Yeah.
So my OCD came into play. I bought them because it's hard for me a Batman Black Label story in the oversized format. It's hard for me to not buy the physical
Yeah,
issues.
it's hard.
I just love these, and also because they're limited, so this isn't an ongoing
Yeah,
thing. It's like, okay, it's going to be 3 or 4. I can
yeah,
do
yeah,
that. I know that there's an end in sight. I can dive in and get these. So I too bought the physicals. My
yeah.
OCD right now though is bad because if you'll see, I bought Mike Perkins his books 1 and 3. Paul can see them. I bought
Yeah.
his covers, the main cover, and then
Yeah.
2. I bought what's his name? Sebastian Fiumara. I bought his because I thought the cover was awesome, and I don't know what it was with book 2 on if it wasn't available or what. So now this bugs me though, as I look at the 3 that I have, 2 of them match, and one just seems completely out there.
Do you
It
want to trade?
messes with my mind. No, because I love the
No,
book 2
no.
variant that I
I'll
have.
trade you my 3. I'll trade you because here's the thing,
I
man.
did not like 3. I did not like three's variant at all.
Okay, I was just gonna say I just got these. I wasn't requesting them. They just pulled whatever, and I'm
Sure.
bummed out because I prefer the Perkins covers.
Those Perkins, and there's somebody in oh man, I think it was the Batman on Film Facebook group that we were in. Somebody had met Perkins at a con, and he was selling prints of his covers, and I'm like,
Oh
oh,
my God,
I
no.
want one of those prints, you know.
Dude,
Good
seriously?
stuff. Yeah.
God damn, people get back to me. He'll holler at me. I want to get some of those prints. God damn. All right,
And I
sorry.
don't know who the well actually I can look it up here because I also for this I did download it on Hoopla as well just to see like in the collected version if there's any extras. It's only cover gallery. That issue 3 variant that you have is Tyler Crook, and no offense to Tyler Crook, but it is just a close up mean mugging one of the monsters, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't want that cover.
Yeah.
Ugh, that's an
I
ugly
was not
cover.
happy with that cover. I prefer the Perkins covers.
Paul got that comic shop shut down.
I was pretty bummed, not gonna lie, because I didn't know because I didn't even know there was even a variant until you showed me, and now I'm like, God damn it! Like
Damn it.
I want the Perkins covers, damn it. So, but I'm not
When
gonna-
did you
but-
first when did you
sorry, go
first
ahead.
read this?
I
Don't
read
you
the
ever
first issue.
apologize to me?
Oh, I'm
Don't you
sorry.
ever apologize to me?
As I
And you
as I
just apologize.
apologize, I
God damn it,
apologize.
Paul.
I did it
All right.
again.
When did you first read this?
I read it over time the last summer. Um, but like just like any comic book reader, you that you're a monthly comic reader, you get behind really fast.
Hmm. Oh
Um,
yeah. What are you
so
talking
like
about, Paul?
right, yeah, no one knows what I'm talking about if you read comics on a regular basis, when you buy single issues.
Hmm.
I read the first issue and absolutely fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And but then life gets caught up, and the thing about me is when I really want to read something, I want to give it my full attention. There's some books and
Yeah.
some things that
Absolutely.
I'm like, I'll like kind of like we talked about earlier, right? You're just gonna casually read it. Like there's a lot of monthly issues that you kind of just do that with. Like this is not a detriment at all, but like I read Jed McKay's Avengers right now, which I'm really enjoying. I don't like have to be in a good space to read that. I can just pop it in, pop it out. I'm good, right?
Hmm.
After I knew I wanted to give us my attention my first issue with my full attention the first issue, fell in love with it, and said, okay, no matter what, I have to sit down and read these like with full attention, and that took a while to get to. If you have I have a kid, life is busy,
Yeah.
yada yada yada. So I'd say over the summer into like fall. I know you're gonna be like, why'd you pick it at the Batman Book Club? I'll get to it, okay? Just
Yeah.
bear with
That's
me,
coming.
people.
That's
God
coming.
damn it. No.
That's next question.
But yeah,
But I
that
got to
was
answer mine too.
yeah, so that was where I kind of it took me a little bit to get to it, but it was because like I was lazy, but because I really wanted to give it like I reread it a couple times. So
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Excellent. As the wrap up episodes that Pete and I do last year, you'll hear that I was reading this as it was coming out. I was waiting, getting my hands on the physical copy to read it for the first time. Some of those, like you said, like give stuff your full attention, whatever. Some of them, I'm like, oh, I don't want my first reading to be on the iPad, especially a format like this.
Yeah.
It's going to be bigger than the iPad, so I wait for that. But I was reading it as it was coming out, and how you said of giving full attention and whatnot. A friend of this show, actually Eric Carter, I talked to him yesterday, and I'd asked, I sent him a picture of this, and I said, hey, have you read this yet? And he was like, no, it's on my list on DC Universe. And I go, oh, okay, well, just let me know when you get there. I'm recording with Paul Herman, and he's like, that son of a bitch. I know I listened to him in one bad month. And I go, I know, but he's coming back on. It's just gonna be one episode. It'll
I'll
be
listen
fine.
to this guy again.
And I told him that you and I were recording that was gonna be the next episode. And he's like, all right. And then next thing I knew, he's like, I just read the first issue. I loved it.
Mhm.
And he actually listened to reading the Caped Crusader listening to the Caped Crusader soundtrack. And I think that's a great pairing, by the
Dude,
way. So I
word,
do love that
right?
score. And the next thing I knew later in the day, he's like, well, I finished it. And I just bought the hardcover.
Add up,
so,
baby, Eric.
so
Add
DC
up,
Comics,
baby.
by the way, maybe just a small little commission, throw a little bit
Yeah,
this way
come
because I think
on,
I'm getting
DC.
people into bad habits of buying comics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I first read this as it was coming out. So now let's get to that question.
Okay.
Why'd you pick First Night?
Well, a couple different things. Okay. I was really intrigued by the pitch.
Mhm.
And because first of all, Dan Jurgens is writing it, and he's a
Mhm.
prolific comic writer, and I
He
would
is
say he's a
best
legend.
known for Superman. Am I
Right.
correct?
Yeah, no, right. He's written a lot.
So
He
that's also
created.
intriguing. Sorry. I was
No,
gonna
you're
say
good.
quick of like sometimes it gets I don't know if it was Mark. I think it's supposed to be pronounced Miller, but we
Yeah,
Americans
it's
always say
Millar.
Millar.
It's Miller.
Um,
It's supposed to be Miller. It's
the
Miller.
AR really tricks us
Yeah,
into thinking
yeah,
it's supposed to be R.
yeah.
But I
It's
feel
Miller.
like it was him when he said if you want, to make get some attention in comics, it's not like this DC writer is taking on another or it's like jumping from Marvel over to DC, that's a that's a big deal, and vice
Yeah.
versa, and stuff like that. But like also shaking it up of okay, Dan Jurgens, he's known for Superman. He hasn't really done Batman at all, and it's like here's a Black Label story with Dan Jurgens. It's like
It's really intriguing.
this is a legendary writer. This is like he's had a
Hmm.
long history of writing like in DC Comics, and he's taking on something that's solely strictly Batman, which just doesn't happen. So I feel like
And
that is an attention getter.
yeah, and also the time period, right? It's supposed to
Yeah.
take place when he first debuted in like what the year. I don't like 39 or 40. Is that what?
1939.
Yeah. So I mean, like that right there was like, okay, that's interesting. And my Dan Jurgens knowledge, stems from, obviously Superman, but he also created Booster Gold.
Hmm.
He did a Spider-Man clone saga like part. He threw his hat in the rink of that. I mean, I had his issues were very good. Like he designed a very sleek Spider-Man costume that eventually the character Spider-Girl adopted.
Hmm.
It's like he's a legend, dude. And he's just done tons of books, and he's not a bad writer. He's a solid writer. I would never put him in the echelon of like, the Alan Moores and things like that, like where he's like,
Sure.
I think a top 10 writer as well, like, a comic book writer, a superhero writer, but he's very good. Like, that's not a
Hmm.
bad thing. It's like, he's very good. So that got my attention. The other thing was Mike Perkins,
Hmm.
because I don't know Mike Perkins super well, but I do
I don't
know
either.
he worked on with Ram V on Swamp Thing, and I love Ram V. And so I was like, okay, like Ram V's the what I've read of Swamp Thing was fantastic, and I need to finish it because I'm lazy. That's one of those things where I need to get back on. But the artwork was incredible for Swamp Thing,
Hmm.
and I like, oh, Mike Perkins is doing the art. Okay, I'm intrigued. So, and I remember thinking, with you brought the Cape Crusader, I do find it interesting. I thought it was interesting that they were doing the Cape Crusader was announced all back in the same timeline, right? And then also this. And we were talking to our buddy Chris Clow. I said, "That's weird. Why are they doing these stories?" And he's like, "It's because of the what's the word? Uh Public domain.
Hmm.
And they want to get there before other people are."
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh, hmm, interesting." I mean, that's what he told me. Maybe I heard him wrong, but
Who are we to argue with the professor?
true. But I do that makes sense, especially in the
Sure.
when we talk about this, it makes a lot of sense. So anyway, yeah, I was immediately intrigued by it and bought the first issue, loved it,
Hmm.
absolutely loved it. And when I figured I'd like the rest of it, which I was correct, I loved the rest of it. It made me think like, dang, like this is. It made me, to be honest, Ryan, it made me think of Dan Jurgens a completely different way. And like, this guy's a legit writer. like legit, like good writer. Like I always thought he was
You
a good
know, I
writer.
think he's just been, coasting off of others' accomplishments until he got to Batman,
Well, but
Batman
like
made him a man.
I don't want to act like yeah, I don't want to down that like I don't want to like
No, I'm gonna clip that part out and I'm gonna make sure to put that out there. Like everybody, make sure Dan Jurgens sees this, that Paul thought he was
no.
a fraud until he wrote
No, no, no,
first.
no. Like he was always a good writer, but like this made me even like I will say this. First Night made me respect him even more. Like, no, no, no.
There you go.
This guy
Sure.
legitly knows what the hell he's doing and like is a damn good writer. So
Yeah.
yeah.
When a writer can take on, you can say artist as well. They take on, okay, so he has obviously established himself with Superman in that world, and he does like a great job writing Superman.
Yeah.
To then jump into another character and then do something really well there is like, yeah, it's okay, more respect. It's not just he's a massive Superman fan, loves Superman. He tried Batman, it wasn't very good. So just stick to Superman. It's like, nope. He, Jeff Johns is a similar thing, of like,
Oh yeah.
okay, with his like Teen Titans, he did really good. And then he hopped on Flash, did great. Then Green Lantern did great. It's like, yeah, okay, this guy's the best. He can
Yeah. Jones
accomplish
rules.
anything and
I love
anybody.
Jones.
Um, no, this puts him in a new light for me as well, just because I mean, this is called the Batman Book Club, not the Superman Book Club.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a history of reading his work other than just like some names, like, well, I haven't read really like his Superman, but I know he's common in the Superman world. And then to read this one, which also like this is a Black Label, this is a rated R story, and
Yeah.
he excelled like that too. So it's like this is just very different from what I know him from. And
Exactly.
that's really cool to me. And it ends up being a
Yeah.
story that I really like. Spoiler alert, I really enjoy. Let me read the synopsis quick in the back. And it's going to
Yeah.
be kind of long, but I'm going to try and read it really quick. The year is 1939. The world, still reeling from the horrors of the First World War, is on the brink of tipping into an even more gruesome conflict as fascism is on the march and gathering strength in America's darkest corners. Against this backdrop, a series of violent murders has begun in Gotham, and the recent emergence of the mysterious vigilante known as the Batman has the power brokers of the city living in fear of institutional collapse. All the evidence in the murder investigation defies logic. The perpetrators are all men who died in the electric chair. But when the Batman comes face to face with one of those sickening anomalies, he barely escapes with his life, throwing into question his ability to survive in a world that is brutally evolving around him. So something that is interesting to me with that, I almost feel like there's a bit of a disconnect, and we're going to get in there and talk about this specifically. The world 1939, reeling from First World War on the brink of another conflict. Fascism is on the march. Against this backdrop, a series of violent murders has begun in Gotham. It's almost like it feels disconnected. We're going
Mhm.
to dive in a little more than that.
Okay.
You said the year of 1939, obviously significance because that's the year Batman was created,
Sure.
right? So you have that. The setting of this I have longed for way back in the day before Bill Ramey knew my name, and I'd written like in mailbag questions to him about like I think like a Batman series, like an HBO taking place in the 30s, early 40s, something like that will be so awesome and so cool. A comic series. There was a comic book by Chip Kidd, graphic designer Chip Kidd, who maybe his name isn't familiar. He has, if you're a Batman fan and read books, like he has his name in so many things, Batman. He did a book called Batman Death by Design. Really cool looking and different kind of book. It's almost like the book is like shading throughout the whole thing, but that takes place in the 30s. And
Hmm.
that looks really awesome. And I was like, man, I want more like contemporary artists and writers doing stories of that time period with Batman. I just think it'd be awesome and stripping away the tech and getting more bare bones. So when this story was announced, like that really, really excited me. And
Mhm.
it's like, and I think you go back and you read Batman's first appearance in Detective Comics number 27. You can see in those earlier stories of probably this book, the approach is almost like this book now is like in a way how they felt they were telling the story then.
Exactly.
And that's
Nailed
a,
it.
it's a
Yeah.
great uh perception, I think, of the story
Mhm.
because I like I'll be the first to admit I can't sit and binge Golden Age Batman.
Oh,
It's
anything
tough.
Golden
It's a
Age, can't do
tough.
it.
It's a
It's
tough
rough.
like read for me. I do certain issues and stuff just so I can be like, okay, like you call yourself a
Context.
fan, I've got to do it. I've got to
Yeah.
read these first appearances, these first issues and stuff, and debuts of Alfred and all sorts of stuff like that, just to so that I've done the work. But they're
Mhm.
not ones I'm going to go back to very much
Yeah,
at
war,
all.
dude.
So it's like this is an easier sell of like this is kind of what I think in their minds were. They clearly had to tone stuff down because back then you couldn't
Yeah.
have the F bomb in comic books. You couldn't have
Yeah.
stuff as violent and all sorts of, restrictions, but I feel like it's a good telling of what in their eyes like they were putting out there back then. So I think that to me was
Yeah.
just the biggest freaking sell other than Batman is the setting.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly besides the people working on it, which if you were to tell me Dan Jurgens and Mike Perkins were working on a Batman story that was like modern day, I'd
Sure.
be interested, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
be as like, it wouldn't pull me in as much as the pitch that you just said. Like I know it's 1939. It takes place the year he was supposed to, actually debut in. And so that whole like period setting adds an element because as a writer, you're restricted to the surroundings of, for the most part of like if you're putting yourself in that kind of a condensed time frame,
Yeah.
you have certain things you have to play with.
Hmm.
And as a creative person myself, sometimes you're liberated by the limitations, if that makes
Hmm.
any sense, right?
No, 100% with you. Sometimes it's like you have a blank canvas, do whatever you
Right.
want, and it's like there's
Eight
too many
possibilities.
options.
Right.
Can you limit it and give me five ways to go, and
Right.
then I'll be okay.
Yeah, and there's some people who can have no limitations and they
Yeah.
knock it out of the park. And I feel like but I think it's cool when a writer or artist, whoever, or the
Yeah.
capital A, I should say, artist with the capital A, can take something and has a real vision for what they're doing. And I think that's what the condensing that I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And Jurgens feels you know, like he knew what he was doing, but that whole idea, that pitch, I'm not sure if it was something he pitched or if there was they pitched it to him or whatever. Whoever's idea it was brilliant because that setting, the whole, like, the birth of organized crime, basically, of like going crazy of that
Hmm.
timeline makes sense for a superhero, for someone to dress up as a superhero, to be that over the top character that
Yeah.
we all accept now as superheroes. That in any time, right? Right. In my opinion, Ryan, it makes the most sense to happen probably then opposed to now, if that makes any sense. So to see it realized in a very realistic ish, air quotes, ish way is very intriguing for me. When we put that creative team on it, you're like, yes. Like, so without the period piece, I don't think it's as interesting, in my opinion.
I think I agree too because Batman on it and you got me. Like anything, everything that Batman is on it
Yeah.
and comes out, I'm gonna be trying it. So then it does like it's a all right. What else about it? Okay, you have a
Right.
writer, you have the artist. Okay, what else about it? Oh, the story takes place in the third. That definitely is the draw. That's the biggest draw. It's gonna have a cool look to it, something different. That's how it's gonna stand out in the bunch. Some of the we're talking time period and everything. They lean into it some, which is fun. The beginning in the individual issues, they have a lot of newspaper like clippings and front page and stuff. In the collected hardcover, they
Yeah.
kind of only have like one.
Lame.
Yeah, which is interesting to me. Maybe page count, I don't know, and maybe it's something different. Yeah,
Hmm.
so here we go. In the Yeah, so the one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, like papers and magazine covers, like sitting on a desk with coffee in that first issue. Whereas I look in the hardcover on based on Hoopla, and it's only one. And it says May 30th, 1939. The Gotham City Gazette, and radio station offers gets cut off, photo of Batman, and then you see in the top right Julie Madison, Sir Martin Brock, headline all-star cast. That's not in issue one at all. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, that's something new and different. But in the actual physical copies themselves, it's very much leaning into the times to support, like that's where we're at in that era. When Gordon and Bruce are in the car and they're going down the streets, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is on the marquee at the theater. That was released in 1939. Obviously, it opens up with The Voice doing almost like an FDR fireside chat on a radio next to a
Hmm.
fire. So it's like really leaning into the time setting. And I think what kicks it off, aside from that, is I could totally see those panels of that, like Batman's debut, where Bruce Wayne is sitting there chatting with Commissioner Jim Gordon.
Hmm.
And the book opens up basically to Bruce in his great sports car sitting and chatting with Commissioner Gordon. And it's like that right there is where I link to, oh, this is how, like, this is definitely Jurgens tuning his brain into what like Bill Finger and Bob Kane did for that debut.
Hmm.
They're buddies. Like Bruce has a big secret, but they're buddies. They're pals, and um, I it's so dumb. Paul, I like that. But historically, that's correct.
Right. Well, and here's the thing, like you with every Batman story, if you're telling like if you're doing like I wouldn't say a retelling, but you're doing a shifting of like a new retelling, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, you have to play with within certain rules, or in the case of like Absolute Batman, like you can kind of like throw everything out if that's your pitch. But there's certain elements you if you want to keep it within like a confines of a period piece, you want to keep it somewhat familiar. You don't want to go completely the opposite direction, like an Absolute Batman, because that's not really its intent necessarily. It's supposed to be of the time. Again, going back to the timeline where the period, that's the emphasis. So you have to, in order to keep your people, the readers engaged, you have to keep it familiar. That's the whole point,
Hmm.
right? So keeping Commissioner and Batman together is essential. And I thought it would work really well because, for one thing, I want to say that the thing you opened, the beginning of all the newspaper stuff, is
Hmm.
brilliant because you see all these different headlines. They set you right in that era
Hmm.
immediately. So you, as a reader, as again, that's why I love the comic medium so much, Ryan. You really open up and you go, you're transported. You're like, all right, I know exactly where this is going, right? Like everything's laid out right there. Next page, we're talking about the depression,
Hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. So like,
Yeah, I didn't even mention depression.
yeah, so like you're getting, but that's all set up also through the commissioner and Bruce's conversation. You get all of that. And this is where you have an experienced writer put on a clinic like Jurgens because he does all the heavy lifting in the first 5 pages. And you have Perkins doing beautiful renders of the era of the 30s and 40s.
Hmm.
And you're immediately like captivated because because the thing about comic books people that you have to remember, and this is as a reader and as a creator myself. Again, I have only created like one like 5 page digital comic out there, but just bear with me. You have to think about in the terms of you need to get your readers hooked within like 5 pages, right? You have to
Yeah.
get them hooked. So if you're not showing Batman literally in five, and if you can do me a favor, tell me when Batman shows up in the first issue. I know it's well past 5 pages. You have to engage that reader immediately. So you have to basically get Bruce, you have to introduce like the era, get people engaged, which you get the voice in the very beginning.
11, page 11.
Yeah, pay,
And
yeah,
it at a distance too. So he's very
right.
small.
But his entrance is grand.
Oh yeah.
But like, but the thing is, you have to build up to it, and then people are going to give it a chance, right? Because it's Jurgens, and he has
Yeah.
a little, he's playing with house money a little bit, right? So the rules don't exactly apply exactly what I'm saying, but you get my picture. You have to really engage people and get people hooked in immediately, and I
Hmm.
think really emphasizing Bruce Wayne and Gordon's relationship is important because you need to establish that this is the traditional Batman we know, and that it's coming, and where exactly does all this fit in. You get everything you need to know within those first 11 pages, and that's, again, I say a clinic because he does all the heavy lifting you need to know. Introduces the villain, what's going on, essentially. It's
Hmm.
all right there, but you haven't seen the protagonist yet, and that's pretty impressive. So it's again, I was really impressed with what Jurgens was doing. And if you, I don't know if you want to get right into it, but like the entrance of Batman is effing amazing. Like straight up 89
Well,
inspired.
yes, but what you said of getting interest is like I think we see the murder scene
Right.
and how like kind of how gruesome the murder scene is. I think okay, that's kind of a way, and I think this whole book has the power of revisiting because then
Hmm.
it does when you read the whole thing, 'cause opening up and really like zoning in on all this dialogue from somebody in shadow and you don't know who they are or whatever, that could be quickly be forgotten. Anything and everything that they said.
Right.
After you've read the whole story, going back and reading that part again, then it like, oh, okay, it hits better. So it is good to revisit, or worthy of revisiting. And then to draw you in is that gruesome murder scene. And then you do see, um, you get Bruce Wayne and Gordon, in which the woman at the murder scene.
Hmm.
So if you look up like that's like the golden age Hollywood look that they
Hmm.
really went with.
Yep.
That definitely to me looked like if you look up Betty Davis 1939, that's who. And then as we all know, it's like maybe taking a page out of David Mazzucchelli in year one. Bruce is Gregory Peck. There's no arguing
Oh, yeah.
with that one,
Yeah.
like through and through. That's Gregory Peck. But then as you said, Batman's big entrance. Which when I said page 11, it starkly is the image of like that first image of Batman in his debut issue in Detective 27. Look it up, compare and contrast, but it's like a direct and his shadows on the wall in the same shape, and it looks really cool. But then finally getting back to what you were saying, 3 pages later is the full page splash, reminds you, yes, of 89, him coming
It's
through the
always
window.
89.
And
Yeah.
Perkins does this throughout the entire story of like full page splash of
Splash.
Batman
Oh,
looking awesome.
beautiful. Beautiful.
So take it away with that debut of this
Debut.
Batman First
So
Night.
debut.
You liked
Yeah,
it.
dude, I thought it, this is what makes a comic so good. And this is
Yeah.
what I think that brings people underestimate the power of the comic medium when you're getting quality art and layouts by Perkins. Like Perkins, I say, Jurgens is put on a clinic for writing, and he is. Perkins is equally, if not better, putting on a clinic of how you to do sequential storytelling and have it look
Hmm.
interesting without being too exotic. Like not being like Chris Pacheco or I'm sorry, Chris Bocciolo. Pacheco's a different writer, artist, excuse me. Um, yeah, Bocciolo, who is I think really interesting artist and layout artist, but is way too confusing to read his book, to read his stuff. Whereas Perkins, like this, there's a when Bruce and Jim are driving, there's a on the I can't tell you what page it is, but it's the page where it's two top panels are Jim is like it's like a landscape panel of him talking, and then Bruce is on the bottom landscape panel, but his head is over both the panels. It's just little stuff like that is so interesting, and it
Yeah.
keeps the reader engaged without being boring or just so typical. But those two panels are over like a layout of like a broader thing of them driving in town, and it's just he's able to place these panels perfectly where it's interesting without being like too much because they're very simplistic too, but he does enough to draw you in. When you add all that to the beautiful splash page of the 89 inspired Batman entrance, it's just like this is what comic storytelling is supposed to be. You're leading all up to this moment and it pays off because
Hmm.
you built it up through the I think the dialogue and also the visual storytelling. It's beautiful. And I just the artwork in this I can't get over. Mike Perkins just destroyed this thing
He
in the best way.
creates a very uh stylized 1939 that
Yes.
feels very grounded, which is such a trigger word for people now. If they hear grounded, they roll their eyes so much. They don't like
Yeah.
grounded. They want fantastical, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Batman works best when he's grounded. And I think that this setting of
Yeah.
like it's very grounded here. It looks great. It looks very historically accurate. It plays in shadow. It's kind of, it's kind of dirty. It's like that's freaking Gotham City. That's Gotham City. It looks
Yeah.
awesome. I dig the look for sure. You mentioned Batman's uh debut. What do you think of the style? Like Batman's suit. How does he look?
I think it looks great. I think it's the purple gloves are a little much, maybe you could say, but at the same time,
I mean, historically accurate.
right. I forgive it because it's historically accurate, and like I forgive it for that alone. And otherwise, I love how stylized it is, how specific it is. It is the 1939 debut to a T in a very realistic, at the grounded way, as you said, and how much it works. And I think it only adds, Ryan, to the era, and adds to the fact that like we're getting something that's different. This is not this typical a Batman story where it's like I have long ears like Kelly Jones, like which I love Kelly
Yeah.
Jones. This is not like but you get what I'm saying. Like it's very much its own thing now.
Hmm.
And that is pretty cool. And like Perkins has put his stamp on that. Like who else draws Batman like this right now? Anybody?
Yeah.
Like nobody. And like now Perkins has now introduced this different, who knows what maybe artists 10, 15 years from now will draw the current continuity Batman like this. Who
Yeah.
knows? But really Perkins has made it look kind of like it's kind of ridiculous, but kind of rad too, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So it's funny that like that's what you bring up first because it was a DC Nation interview, like a couple questions with Mike Perkins, and the question was asked, what are some of the artistic differences between this Batman and the contemporary Batman? And he said the biggest difference artistically is the ears, those
Yeah.
beautiful enlarged scalloped ears that make such a perfect silhouette. The interior of the cape is different too, a light blue against the black. I included purple gloves that only go up to the wrists and that big yellow utility belt. As far as bat tools, he carries a rope and some smoke pellets. This guy likes to keep to the shadows. So the purple gloves historically accurate. I know that drove Pete nuts. Pete doesn't like purple gloves. I'm not necessarily a fan of purple
Yeah.
gloves.
It's
That is
not
the
a deal
debut of
breaker.
him. It's what he
Yeah.
looked like. I get it. The ears are a thing too. It's like, do I love them? No, but they don't bother me. It's the look of like the
See,
like
I love them.
it's
They're
it
ridiculous,
doesn't
but I
it
love
just
them.
doesn't really it just doesn't really bother me. And then the like emphasizing of like the blue kind of reflection of light, which is like that's nodding to color like grading printing back in the day. Blue
Yeah.
highlights. Otherwise, you're not going to have any kind of uh what do you want to say specific
It won't be a big blob.
differentiating of yeah, just
Yeah.
be a big blob.
A
Um,
big blob of dark,
so
basically.
yeah, I mean, otherwise it's like it's totally believable of like this is what he's got back then. Like
Yeah.
very basics.
Yeah.
Back to the basics. Stick to the
Yeah.
basics. Stick to the basics.
But I think, but again, that you have to. There's one thing I've realized in design that I learned from Leland Chee, from who is a chief like creator of Star Wars now, and like helped design
Hmm.
the prequels. And one thing George Lucas taught him, and George Lucas is like not a designer, but he's he masterminds what people connect to, and that's what George I think is really amazing at. He always said, and I'm sure this is like not groundbreaking, but I love it. He said what's important in Star Wars for design, I think this goes design in general, is silhouette. That to me is what is so important, because the silhouette is what makes like you recognize the outline of things immediately. And that's where you really click onto. And I think the silhouette of this Batman is easily like the best like silhouette in a while. And I think that to me is why it's so special. And that to me is why design works. And I think everything else is just kind of like, okay, it's whatever. It's not like it's purple gloves, the colorings, whatever. But I mean, those are all throwbacks to like it makes it more fun to know the context of everything. So yeah, so I think like to me, the design, the silhouette of it is really important, and that's what Perkins gets, and that's what makes it a great design, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
It's one of the it's the Cavill Affleck meme. You were Cavill, now I'll be Affleck. I agree. Moving on. Next question. But I mean, leaning into it even a little bit more is definitely like the Wayne Manor and the Batcave or absence of Batcave.
Yeah.
And it's totally believable that he is a solo guy, which they cover, also historically accurate. Alfred wasn't here at that time. He wasn't.
Right.
So how does Jurgens cover it? He even says at one point of like that Bruce says, the help or whatever, he left when I went to college. So it's like that
Mhm.
covers it. If Alfred's not here in the history of Batman canon, Alfred's
And
not
he's
there yet.
struggling without him
Hey,
too.
in the story, doesn't have Alfred. So it's like, of course, he doesn't need the cave. He's at this big manor all by himself, and he's just
Mhm.
kind of set up his own stuff there. And then he's got this warehouse within the city, like this bunker in the city, where he has, where he suits up, where he drives his car and parks it, and all of that. So like all the bases are covered in a very realistic, non-fantastical way, And
Mhm.
I love the Batcave. I love the Batcave. I love the Batmobiles. Like I love those, but for this story, it's like it's not there because it doesn't need to be. What they have instead totally works for the story and what they're aiming for. So
Well,
that's just adding into the time
yeah,
period as well.
I think like the Batcave would be cool, but I think it just felt more like to your point. I think it added to the element of he's alone,
Yes,
and
exactly.
I think that to me is what Jurgens was going for, and
Hmm.
I thought like Jurgens did so much great like foreshadowing or just leading up to like what is kind of necessary for um for these stories because he emphasizes immensely how much he needs help,
Yeah.
right? When you introduce Julie and how much she emphasizes more and more and more and more, like, why don't you have help? I can just walk in whenever I want. Like, like you're emphasizing without Alfred's absence is felt without him being there
Hmm.
and without really being a character because he is so by himself. And I love that is an element of the story. And like it adds to Julie a little bit, obviously, the love interest. But to me, it only adds to the fact of like the mythos of Batman of like he's not complete yet, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like that's an element. The Batcave not being established yet is another reason. I think he's just kind of like he's so in the zone right now of being Batman, Ryan, that he doesn't like think about I need a Batcave, you know? Like
Yeah.
he's just like I need to like figure this out. It's he's so early in his days that there's reasons why it's not there. I think that's what we're seeing, and we're seeing that foundation laid out by Jurgens, and that again is like put on a clinic by a good writer who knows how to make you feel like, yeah, Alfred's not there, but you feel that absence so much. You're like, oh man, like he's doing it subconsciously, or just, I'd say subconsciously, sure, but you get what I'm saying. Like it's not
Yeah.
there. He needs it. And I think that's brilliant.
So you mentioned Julie Madison.
Yes, Julie Madison.
Also, for anyone wondering, her debut was also in 1939, Batman or
So she's a
Detective
legit
Comics
character. She's
number
a legit
31.
character.
She is.
Okay. Okay.
Detective 31. And so that is, I believe that is the one with hold on, let's check just to make sure. I don't want to screw this up because then my show will be canceled. But that's like the Mad Monk basically.
Okay.
The iconic cover. Yes, okay, there we go. Of Batman up in like large in front of the moon. In front of him is the castle on the hilltop.
Does he have like
Um,
the her in
it's
his
been just
arms?
mock. No, that's
Okay.
got it's been done and nodded to in so many other Batman covers.
Neil
and
Adams did it,
everything.
right?
Iconic cover.
Or
Did Neil Adams do
did
one of
an
them?
homage to it. He did an homage
An
to it,
homage.
didn't he? Something like that.
I think so. I'm going blank on that. Um, let's see now. I got to do this. Matt Wagner did it. It was amazing, amazing. Yes,
I like.
Batman 227. There
By
you
the
go.
way,
You got it.
I did. All right, good. So, by the way, just a side note, I did not like Mad Monk and the Monster Men.
Go to hell, Paul.
Hold on, sir. Give me a minute, okay?
Okay,
I
fine.
said, like, I read it a long time ago, right? And a couple, then I think before we moved, I read it, like both of them. I'm like Matt Wagner, Grendel. All right, I gotta read this. Read it. I'm like, okay, I get it. This is legit. So,
Okay.
loved it.
Son of a bitch, Paul.
I know.
Son of a bitch. He almost got me there.
Yeah,
But anyways, okay. So Julie Madison,
Julie
important first love interest introduced in Batman's world, I believe, and here, which also it just I totally had to go to the Google machine of like which actress. So you got Gregory Peck, I
Who is
think
she?
Betty Davis. Yeah, I was like, who is she? And I found
Who
it
are you?
looks like a Maureen O'Hara. And if you
Okay.
just type Maureen O'Hara 1939 and then put up an image of this Julie Madison, and I think I found her. I found her.
Found her.
So Julie Madison, she comes to Wayne Manor with I already forgot his name because he's not that important.
He's a yeah. It's his name's not important. I really wanted to.
Brock Martin Brock. Okay. Like
Br-
he's made up,
again,
I think.
yeah. I loved um the the Julie Madison character is really interesting to me because she was, I liked how it shows that Bruce needs a very like competent, like very strong-willed, strong personality, partner, to be in love with and be with because he's so strong-willed himself. He needs someone to be able to stand up to that, right?
Yeah.
And I really thought it was really rad how you initiate that she and him are there, and she's the one doing all the talking. He's not
Yeah.
talking. She's the actress. He's the director. He should be the one, but no, she's the one talking. Again,
No, he's not a director. He's
isn't he? Oh,
also
he's a co-star. Sorry, he's a
he's
co-star.
a co-star, and then they are in which this is also for the times. Completely makes sense. And they don't flat out bluntly say it, but the way
Right.
that it's
You get what I'm
written is
going
like,
for.
oh, okay, is
Oh,
that
she's covering for him.
she is covering for him and his private life, this Sir Martin Brock, because or not because covering in public as if they are a couple to cover his private life.
Right.
So that
Which
also is historically accurate, and then that also makes adds an interesting, you could say, obstacle between
for
Julie
her.
and Bruce of like
The
she's like, I
dual.
can't be seen in public with you because he is my friend and my partner that like I'm covering
Right.
for him. I can't mess that up.
Well,
And so I
and
think
think about
that's
this.
go ahead.
Well, yeah. But think about this too, Ryan. Like they have something in common. They have to keep a secret.
Oh my gosh.
Like
It's
yeah, well, but that's what's rad about it. Like, and it's also incorporating like different like again like you're not just like ignoring certain aspects. Like it's inclusion with using historical accuracy. Like it's really interesting. Like I thought that was a brilliant play by Jurgens to use that. So, um, love that. Love again. Just there's a lot of little things here that you could just gloss over and be fine with. I'm not saying if you don't get this the first time or if maybe it's too obvious and I'm just being blown it out of proportion, but
yeah.
either way, it's just the little things like this go a long way whether I'm watching a movie or watching a TV show or reading a book or reading a comic book. I want these things to matter and to have it like have some impact. And that's what he does here. And that whole entrance was very interesting. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it really shows you how strong of a personality she is. That sets up for her eventual, showing up in the Batcave later and being like, "Hey, you need help? Whoa, you're a Batman? Oh my God!" Like, it all makes sense in the context of what he establishes in a very, brief time. So again, like, super
Do you think
impressed.
that they move her along too quick? So the reasoning in which anybody who's listening has already read this, but just to address really quick, uh, they come to Bruce because he's like the chief
Right.
financier of their movie, and it's been shut down because funding and all that. So they're coming to basically plead their case to Bruce, be like, why? And he's like, oh my gosh, I don't handle that. My whatever's due. I'll make sure that gets fixed. Blah blah blah.
Sure.
And then she returns again to
To say
see
thank you,
him
right?
in the aftermath. Yeah, to say thank you. And she I think the second time she just comes right in and she stumbles upon Bruce and after he's had a bad night and had the hell beat out of him. And she's like, ah, and calls him Sparky because of his whole like, touched a fuse, wearing a belt, and it just like shocked me,
Right.
bad move, blah, blah, blah.
So stupid.
And she's Sparky, hey Sparky. And
Stop
then
it.
the third time she comes in unannounced and sees him in the suit, and he even says like, "Oh, my locks." And then that's when they end up doing the deed. And that though not as she doesn't move as quick as Vicky Vale in '89, it's still kind of like, oh, this escalated quickly, kind of fast. Now the focus isn't about But yeah, I wouldn't say that that's like such a detractor either. You know, it wasn't like, oh, this just kind of came out of nowhere. It was just like moved along really fast. But I feel like that's like subplot, what, three, maybe four? So how much time of that do we need to keep going back to, throughout this story? And I don't
Well,
know. It's like it's a fine dance, I guess.
okay, listen, I'm gonna say this right now. You got three issues of like what 30 plus pages each.
Like 48,
Yeah, like yeah,
I think
you're
48.
you have a very and like you are trying to wield a lot of different aspects, and the comic medium is so condensed, and the one thing that I'm gonna maybe I'm reaching here, Ryan, but I always interpreted it made sense to me with her because a couple of different reasons. One, he got the funding back, and she did all the talking, so there was a you establish that like she's appreciative, right? Or this meant a lot to her to get this, whatever. When she comes back to say thank you, a couple of different reasons. I think it's legitimate that she has what she thought and she wanted to be, and let's be real. The times you could call someone, but you already showed up once, show up. It feels like showing up randomly is more acceptable back then, maybe not. I
Sure.
don't know. But here's what I will say. I do think that she's attracted to him, obviously, because he's rich as
Yeah.
hell and he's handsome.
Hmm.
So you're and you know what I mean? Like you see what I'm saying? Like it all adds up to me. Like I'm like, yeah, that tracks. She's like, I want to say thank you and see if maybe you want to go on a date or what are you doing? That kind of thing. Like it's kind of doing it's like two birds with one stone, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So that all tracked for me, and then you built off that to her show up again because she's concerned for him because she likes him. She's attracted to him. So that's where I would say is kind of my. That's what I would say would be
It works
my
for you. And
works.
I'm not saying it doesn't work for me, but like just in reading the whole thing this time in basically one sitting, that's just kind of popped up. Like, I just feel like this is a little quick, but I'm not necessarily asking that we needed more either. It's just a
Right,
little,
right, right,
just
right.
on my mind. What popped up quick. Something, there's two other points that I want to mention, is definitely like basically the villainous plot itself, and what you could say
Mhm.
the Monster Men, although it's not a rehash of Batman and the Monster Men. But I want to tap on as we talk about the times, and obviously it's even in the synopsis of like the rise of fascism, the fallout of World War One, the rise of like Nazi Germany, the how that is rising and affecting here
Shape,
in the
yeah,
US. It's
yeah,
shaping the
people.
view in
Yeah.
the world and stuff. And I said earlier, I don't know if that's like just in the synopsis, it feels like a disconnect. It's almost like I think the story plays the same without that. Like I do think if you removed it from the story, it doesn't affect the villain and his moves at all.
I
And
disagree.
I think okay, great. And we lost Paul, so I'll just finish the rest of this episode. So
I was like, wait,
but
you told me I had some camera issues earlier. So
there's and I don't think it bogs the story down at all. It's just kind of interesting to me of like even in reading that, and it's like in the world of rise of fascism and strength in America's darkest corners. By the way, in Gotham City, there's a guy that it seems like there's murders that are happening, and it's these people it's being done by people that are apparently got the electric chair. And so here it doesn't change the villain's motivations. He's not reliant on I can start to fit in with like this Hitler son of a bitch and Nazis and all that. It's like it's his own taking. Now the reliance on I think an Alfred substitute is this rabbi. You bring in
right,
rabbi, okay, this connects highly to to Nazi Germany. Like that's a
right.
direct connection right there. And it's like I don't know, it's just like and I'll let you take over on why you disagree here in a second.
Goddamn right you
But
will.
it's like damn, we lost Paul again. This is getting unreal. This is his last appearance on the show. And I don't, and none of it do I dislike. I'm very fascinated by that time period, and I think most people
Right.
are by World War II because I think that's that just kind of seems like a case where it is very clear who the villain is. You know, it's very clear who the villain is
Right.
in that whole era. And with this rabbi, it's somebody that Batman can like he helps patch up Batman. Uh Batman gets it to where this guy can be protected because in case he gets targeted, in which he does, the rabbi ends up getting targeted, and Batman even, reveals his identity to this guy. So I feel like this is a substitute Alfred,
Yeah.
in a way for sure. And I like the rabbi character in this too because
Mhm.
he's a good voice of reason. Just he's a flat out like good character, but I just kind of feel like I don't think that it's not reliant on like the story itself is not reliant on
Okay.
all of the historical context of Nazi Germany. All right, take it
Okay.
away.
So here, all right. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. I don't think how do I phrase this because this kind of goes into my actually a criticism of the book, to be honest.
Your criticism or something you've seen
Yeah.
from others? Yours.
No,
Okay.
no, my criticism. I don't love the villain at the end. I don't. I think
I'm
that's.
with you.
I think that's like, if I'm being real, that's probably the weakest part of the book. It's not a deal breaker, but it's not as glam. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, but it just was kind of anticlimactic. Now, that being said, I think it's the character themselves I'm not a big fan of, Ryan,
Uh-huh.
but the motivation and whatever he represents, I do find fascinating because that is all a metaphor for Nazi Germany, right? Because this guy wants to lead and have mindless people underneath them, right? That representing
Yeah.
the dead people. He wants them to be under his wing and lead them. He wants to get rid of Gotham's leaders and get to be in control. That's what he wants to do. What did Hitler do? Right? Like, got in control. He found people to believe in him, and and not what you get what I'm saying. Like, this is um a whatever you want, metaphor, whatever, right? Metaphor. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like a I always forget what the word is for this, but regardless, to analog, you could say in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, that character, the warden who creates these zombie like people, that's what all represents to me. So when he's telling Batman, like, I'm going to be in control, like, that's why I'm doing this. Like, I want to get rid of the commissioner, the mayor, because I want to show that I can be in control and I can control this and I can protect you. And as someone who my grandparents were from Germany in World War II, like, I'm half German. My dad's full German. And I'll never forget my grandmother telling me, I remember, God, one of the most gracious, loving, will never would take anyone in. Was not racist, was not like anyone like that. She was the most loving person, loved everyone on this planet, right? I'll never forget. I was talking about Hitler once. I go, "Yeah, Hitler, Grandma. What was it like?" She's like, "He was an awful person." She goes, "Oh, he was a great man." I was like, "What?" And oh yeah, he housed us and, like, give us jobs. He's a great man. Like, blah blah blah. And, like, she was like talking. It's like, no, he's still good. And I was like, it blew my mind. It
Yeah.
blew my mind. And it just what I'm saying is, it makes sense in the sense of where someone, and this is why I think it's important, Ryan, because you need to have the context of where this guy is coming from, because he's probably reading about this and being like, yeah, this guy has a right. Like, I need to, like, take control, and, like, they need to control by me. So that is important on top of like the depression of, because I think World War One and the depression are all important for people being desperate and someone to take advantage of that. Um, all for World War II because of Hitler's, influence on on the country, on the world at that time.
Yeah.
So I feel that all tracks for me.
Okay.
And I think if you took it out of it, it'd be just more like, I'm a diabolical villain, which again is not bad, But I think in the context of where Jurgens is playing with, it makes a lot more sense. And even though I don't love the character and the buildup of the character or lack thereof, I do think with all that context with it, it makes it's an easier pill for me to swallow.
So that can lead us then right into, the plot and the villain.
The
And I
plot,
don't know
the
why
villain,
the villain,
the
the
bears,
plot.
the
What
bears,
was I don't
the
know
villain. I
the
like it.
Besso. Okay, I almost said Debo. De Besso.
Debo, Debo
De
Samuel. We got NFL in
Besso.
mind.
Yeah, I know that's what I was thinking too. It's not Debo Samuel. Um,
God bless
but
you.
he so obviously we're led to think that it's which I love the emphasis on Blackgate and the mention of Arkham,
Yep.
but the emphasis
Yeah.
is on
Yep.
Blackgate and
Yep.
how men who supposedly got the electric chair, it seems that they're the ones committing these murders of these high ranked officials. And we
Right.
get a glimpse, and it's we're told, which let's see, a couple things I'm trying to link here. We're brought up about the woman at the beginning that I said, looks like Betty Davis in the bar of the first murder scene, and she says two, I don't know how she describes them. Basically, two huge dudes came in and murdered this guy, and then we find out later that Johnny the Whip, he's got two guys doing the dirty work for him so that his hands are clean. It's like a buildup of like what these look like, and then we get our glimpse of these two beasts basically. And yeah, they look deformed, they look like the monster men, and they're like "Grrrah," and stuff. So it's like, okay, something's not right with them. The end of issue 1 of Batman in the Electric Chair is like, oh, how's he gonna get out of this one? And he does, and it gets explained why and everything, which I think is great. But we're led to believe that it's the warden of Blackgate, that he's the one behind it.
Right.
So I think Jurgens does a good job of us thinking, and I'm blanking on his name, Shelby. Um,
He almost does too good of a job.
Almost too good of a job that when
Yeah.
it's not him, so when it's not him, I wouldn't have guessed. I mean, had me that
Who
it was
would've?
him, and but like when it wasn't him, and sometimes great reveals are kind of like, let me talk about um chapter 12 of Batman the Long Halloween. Labor Day, Paul Herman. The final issue, Holiday attacks uh, Maroni and Gordon and Batman, and then you turn that last page and it's Alberto Falcone. That was like a oh shit, what? Sort
Right.
of deal in a reveal. And this, I
Right.
don't have that when it's like
No.
it's not the I already forgot his
It's
name.
not the it's
Gosh
not
darn
the
it.
guy who runs Blackgate.
It's not
It's
Shelby.
yeah. It's
It's Debo.
it's
It's
Debo
Debo.
Samuel.
And I
He
didn't
went back
have
in
like a
time.
oh shit, it's Debo. It's like oh
It's like who?
yeah,
Who is that
exactly. It's like a
again?
who? Okay. And
But
then I think like the serum monster men kind of thing as like I think the story is told so good with Wagner's Monster Men.
yeah, for
Monster
sure.
Men is not a sell for me though. It's not like
Yeah.
I love it when they bring in the Monster Men. It's like no, it's the
Right.
story itself that he tells that's so tight and so good.
Agreed.
And so here it's like, oh, it's Monster Men kind of. That's not what does it for me. It is the
Yeah.
atmosphere. It's the designs. It's
Absolutely. Yep.
it's the struggles of a very young Bruce Wayne slash
Yep.
Batman. It's like all of that stuff. And the murder can be, hey, it's one dude that's just beheading because he's a hired guy from another dude, or it can be these monster men things. It kind of doesn't matter to me. Like that's an
Yeah.
aspect of like, I don't know. It's okay. So that keeps me from loving the villain as well. The serum thing. So Trey Jackson is as Garrett, our pal Garrett, has taught me as the his name of the learned gentleman. He brought up a very interesting question to me. So spoiler alert, Devo dies at the end.
Yeah.
In this massive, the Gotham's under attack from this, turning them all into monster men, whatever. And Batman's, there to save the day. There is a moment when he's fighting DeBesso, and DeBesso goes to stab him with the serum. Batman blocks it, says, "You are the voice," which we learned from those opening pages. The voice is the
Right.
one giving all the commands. And he says, "You are the voice for the lives you've taken." And then you see Spack where he blocks the shot of the serum and then hits him, in which DeBesso falls back, and you see he sticks himself with it. And Batman says in the back in silhouette, "A price must be paid." And then you see that it landed in DeBesso's chest. And he goes, "No, I can't. Never dreamed. Yeah, you bastard. Gah!" Great performance by me, I must say. And
I was transfixed.
he dies as a result of that. So Trey, he doesn't throw out shenanigans. Trey thinks about what he says, and he wondered if Batman broke his rule by doing that. Or was it that was just a result of Batman's defense? And I think it was in one of the chat groups that Trey had posed that question. It was a good discussion of seeing back and forths of people. I firmly stood on some people find it as a cop out. I don't have to kill you, but I don't have to save you. Or I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. And I kind of feel
exactly what it is.
He blocks. He has that force on him to where then it is like, God, get off me.
Yeah.
As a result of him defending and getting him off him, old Debo falls himself and punctures himself.
I think it's pretty obvious.
I felt like, to me, and I don't have the there were some good cases and points of view that it's like I don't completely I'm not like you are wrong or anything. I was like, it just felt very clear to me that that's what it was, and I kind of can't see it in another way.
Dude, I'm sorry.
You took it that way first?
Yeah.
No. Don't you dare say something negative about Trey Jackson.
Listen, I don't know I don't know Trey very well. I apologize, but I'm going to say this right now. There's no way in hell that he is responsible for that guy's death. Because if you're playing self-defense, right? Like if you're self-defense and you fall on something that you are trying to poke someone with, it's like, but that person's like, first of all, does he have the antidote still at that point? We don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where he fell on his own, like he's trying to kill Batman with his own thing and falls on it. And it's like, well, sorry, I could try to save you, but maybe we don't, I don't know. To me, it's
just going to do another powers boost. Well,
bye. Yeah. Basically, that's the way I looked at it. I'm like, well, there's not really, how about this? If you're okay with Batman Begins saying, I don't.
And some people aren't.
Yeah,
they think that's a bit of a cop out too.
If Trey's okay, if they're both that's your prerogative. But if you're okay with that, but not with this, that's contradictory in my opinion. Okay. I respectfully think it's a contradiction.
Paul's got the gloves off. He's ready to fight people.
No fight people. Just my opinions.
Fight people.
He did not. I could see where people could say that, but to me, it's like a price must be paid because what is he gonna do? This guy, he's dangerous. He's straight up dangerous, and he did it to himself. You think Batman's gonna save a Joker if he did that to himself? I don't know if Batman does that. Yeah. Batman's not. If he choked him to death, it'd be different. But that's not what he did. The guy fell on his own serum. So Batman's like, well, this is your cause. You caused all this. You're gonna pay the price. He didn't put the gun. He didn't stab him. If he stabbed him with it himself, that's different.
It's you evil son of a bitch.
Yeah, you kick this, Debo. Hey, this is for the 49ers.
Yeah.
So anyway,
let's see. I didn't ask you about the end. Did you find it very intriguing at the end of book 2? The nod to Batman Year 2 and Batman standing there holding a gun.
Yes,
Batman's got a gun.
Ooh, nice reference there, by the way. Chaney's
yes.
What you gotta do? What her daddy put her through?
He wrote his last "I owe you," and that's when. And so then,
I gotta say, night, know. Oh my God.
Steven
You just
Tyler,
brought,
everybody.
man, you got me going down a freaking rabbit hole right there. Yikes.
I liked
Ah,
how they let that linger for a month and then basically opening pages of book three kind of put the kibosh on it. And this is where Julie makes herself comfortable coming right into
right.
Wayne Manor.
Yeah.
But it is that voice of clarity for Bruce where you weren't committed of like because you have Gordon in this, and I do think rightfully so. Even in the Batman, Gordon tells uh Batman says to Gordon when they visit the Wayne residence, you know, the old orphanage, and he says something about no guns, and Gordon's like, yeah, that may work for you, but not me.
Right.
And then Gordon in this is telling Batman of like as they're working on their relationship, and he's like, dude, you've got to have a gun. I don't know how
Yeah.
you're gonna survive without it. And it's like it does make sense that he would contemplate it, but I do appreciate the scene of Julie comes in, and after she's like, wow, she's like, no guns, and then she's like, except for the bat gun, if you know what I mean. And they go hopping into a chair together and have a good old time. Wah, wah. But like it was worth addressing, and I did like the moment.
No, I think it make I think you have to keep the story. It's three issues, right? You have to keep it
Hmm.
like engaging. You have to have the hero
Yeah,
struggle. Like I that all tracks. So like because of course someone back in the day of any time's like, why don't you have a gun, Batman? Like cops need weapons to like fight and like addressing that and how his father. I loved again, I don't know if this is accurate for current continuity, Ryan, but I love the fact that his father, when he had to mend a wound of a gunshot wound of like
yeah,
of a gunfight, he's like after that, my father promised he'd never
was
fire a
done
gun
hunting.
again. I was like,
I loved that. Yeah,
I'm like, that's pretty baller, dude. Like
that's
that,
a great detail.
yeah, that to me is what should be used in current comics today.
And it humanizes, you know, a character that we
Yeah,
never see or have any scenes with or anything at all either. It does humanize, and I think it wins you over because of, you know, there's many of us. I eat meat. I always say that if I was responsible for gathering the meat that I eat, because I like to
I
pretend that
wouldn't
meat
do
is
it.
just grown in a field, like through the ground. Yeah, I would end up. I would not. It wouldn't be able to happen. And
Yeah,
so it's
I'd be
like
like, oh, I
I'm
love
not trying
plants.
to be yeah, exactly. I'm not trying to be contradictory, but it is just kind of like a I don't know,
Right.
it's a it wins you over on Thomas Wayne, and I'm definitely in the camp of win me over on Thomas and Martha Wayne, don't dirty them up. So I liked that part too. So I think that overall the scene is good, and then it ends. Wow, 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 boom, chicka, bow, bow. Moving on.
Bruce gets mended, if you know what I
He
mean.
does. Hey.
Hey.
So let's see. Is there any other kind of points you want to talk on before I ask you some questions?
No, I think we've pretty much. I mean, that's. I'll say this. I think that kind of adds to the element. It's a pretty like swift, not swift, but it's a pretty like just like straight ahead story. Is there's not a lot as far as like
There's
there
no
are
deep
some.
monologues or anything like that.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
it's
appreciate that.
the pacing's pretty. I mean, there are sub stories and elements of like the Judas or the my gosh, Rabbi. I said Judas
Okay.
Priest. I'm like, what the hell am I thinking of? The
They
Rabbi.
provided the soundtrack album to this, but
Right.
anyways.
Yeah. But you get what I'm saying. Like you have the rabbi elements of like I love like the whole like prostitution ring where Batman's like,
Yeah, I
I'm
didn't touch
keeping.
on that. And that
Yeah.
was a cool sub story that does
Right.
connect to other parts of the story. And
Well, right.
that
But
was
like,
done well.
yeah. But the fact that like he's like I keep you around because if you do like the whole idea of like I take you out, another person just comes right back in and makes it worse.
Yeah.
Like there is that like cops have to play to that rule too, right? I'm like, man, like, that's pretty.
Oh
That's a
my gosh.
good.
It's funny that you bring that up because I think that that story, that section popped in my mind earlier, but the opening murder scene I think is great because the one cop says working late. That dame is one of Max's girls, Commissioner. And then the Betty Davis lady, she's like, "You're awful judgmental for a man who comes around begging for freebies, copper." Like
Yeah, yeah,
I like
yeah.
that, like zinger. And then
I got you.
Gordon, you get a side view from Gordon. That guy's like,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Commissioner.
What
Oh
you're
my
talking
God,
about.
yeah. Hey,
I found that funny.
yeah. So I think that like for how much it's a pretty like quickly paced book for
Yeah.
everything. So
And I'm
that's
not one that doesn't like internal monologue. Sometimes I think you can sense that writers love themselves when they're writing that internal dialogue and stuff. And
yes,
that can really slow down a story when that happens.
agreed.
Sometimes it keeps a story going very well and everything. But here I can see it like I kept going with momentum of the story because that wasn't present. And I think
Right,
that was
right.
a good call to not have that stuff.
There's not a lot of caption boxes,
Yeah.
and like you said, and like all the inner monologue is naturally Bruce talking out loud to himself, which as someone who does that to myself all the time, I mean, that makes sense. It tracks for
Yeah.
me. So
Paul, are you ready for some questions?
no, I'm not. See you later.
All right, bye, Paul.
Bye.
Yes, you've got a question?
So, Paul,
Yes.
now that I have you here,
Yes.
what was your
I'm back.
favorite part of the Batman first night?
Ooh, I'll be honest. It's probably the entrance. I think that is just a phenomenal entrance.
Mhm.
It's an homage, but also it's so impactful. He looks incredible. Perkins' art is amazing. I love the fight scenes afterward. Yeah, I thought that was really good.
Okay. This was really tough for me, actually.
Mm.
I think, and it wasn't a. So by the time that this episode drops, I'll probably change my mind. But I'm just gonna say right now, I think is so book three. Let's see. The first third is ramping up to, the rest of the book, and the rest of the book is just like the big finale. But I
Yeah.
think when Batman goes to the top of Blackgate, and so he's with the gosh dang it, why do I keep forgetting his freaking name? Shelby. Jeez. Shelby and old Debo. Um, yeah, I'm trying to flip there.
Old Deesbo.
Old Debo.
Yeah.
But there's like that's where the revelation happens. But I think the build up to it is really well done as they're going to the roof. And I think the serum with the green, the green smoke and stuff. I think there's so much great visual work done by Perkins here. And there's that, and you have at the bottom of the one page, Shelby. Shelby says, "You." And then it's the full page of Batman with like the green and silhouette, but you see the bat
Oh
symbol.
yeah, I
see
love
the
that.
and
That's
it's like,
great. Great splash.
me. I think that's an awesome looking page. But I like all of that. And he beats the shit out of Shelby, who we think is the bad guy. Then we find out it's not him and that it's Debo. I think for some reason I really like that part because it does close the chapter and begins the next one. Something about that just really sticks in my mind more than the others for some reason. But I bet like my mind can go like three different ways in this book on what my favorite part is.
Right, right, right.
What was your favorite panel in a book full of so many good
Splash. I hate to say it, man, but probably the introduction splash. It's so freaking. It's just so.
Get over it, Paul.
It's
Jeez.
so good. It's like I want this. Like it's so. If I wasn't picking the panel, okay. If it wasn't okay, not the splash. If I can't pick the splash, it's gonna be really stupid. But I'm just gonna say it right now.
No, it can be the splash. You answered the
No,
splash.
no.
That's
I don't
what
want to
is.
use it. Okay, I'm
I'm gonna cut out
retracting.
anything you say from here.
I'm
on.
retracting the splash. Okay, leave me alone. God.
Leave me
hold on.
alone.
Leave me alone. Where is it? God darn it. There it is. It's where he has a Tommy gun, and he's
Mhm.
like, "Let me try." Or he says, or he
Yeah.
can try.
Oh, that
It's
makes
a great.
me think of that makes me think of Home Alone. I believe you, but my Tommy gun don't.
Yeah, but he doesn't do anything with the Tommy gun. But it just looks really rad. Like Batman holding a Tommy gun is kind
So
of
you
rad.
heard it here. Paul wants Batman to have a gun.
I want. How about this? I would love for him to have a reason to use a Tommy gun, like have like put gas in it instead, and be like, oh,
Yeah.
Commissioner, I need to ice off some creeps. It's just like it's like
Excellent.
ice, you know. I mean, something like stupid
Yeah.
like that. Like, give me an excuse to have him hold a Tommy gun. That'd be rad. So I love that panel.
Mine comes in book two, and it's at the bottom of the page after Bruce walks to his safe and opens it, and he's staring at the bat suit. Love that image. Makes me think of the third act of Begins. Makes
Oh
me
yeah,
think of 89 when he opens up the safe and the bat suit's there and he's just staring at it. I think that's a great panel. But the one I just mentioned of, on top of Blackgate, where it's like green and the silhouette with the bat symbol and his ears and stuff, I think that looks awesome. There's shots of him on a roof that look very reminiscent of early Batman illustrations. This is like throughout. You could pick 10 panels of this and all of them would be like, "Yep,
they're
I believe it.
yeah.
Yep, I believe
Perkins
it."
kills it, man. He's so good in this.
Does a great job on this one.
He destroys it.
Would you like to see this adapted in animation?
Well, we pretty much already are essentially. I mean, in my opinion, with Cape Crusader, it's not
Hmm,
one for one. It's not one for
fair.
one, but it's like
Sure.
pretty close. Pretty close.
So you're saying we don't need this adapted kind of like directly because we're already kind of getting a semi
Yeah,
version of
I
it.
mean, like
Okay.
it'd be cool. It'd be kind of cool if they did it maybe in I don't know. I mean, yeah, I feel like we're already kind of getting it already. You know, it's like I don't know. I mean, you know me in adaptations, I'm
You
like,
know, you put it that way, and I'm kind of with you because DC animation for the most part looks similar. It's the
yeah,
same style.
yeah,
If they made this a 75-minute standalone movie, would it look that much different than Caped Crusader? I don't know that it would. Now, if they could
yeah.
go completely different in the animation style and like ramp up to like the effect here where there's quite a few F bombs in this and they go balls to the wall and everything. Yeah, give me that version. Sure. But
Mhm.
otherwise, I feel like no, because it will just feel very much too similar to Cape Crusader that we're
Yeah,
already getting.
yeah, and yeah, I think but for the record, I love Cape Crusader. I thought it was fantastic.
Hell yeah. Big fan.
Yeah.
Um, Final thoughts, Paul Herman, on the Batman First Night.
I love giving Batman a hyphen, by the way. Very Spider-Man. Just
Very
for the record.
historically accurate as well.
Yes. But they did away with the hyphen. Now Spider-Man owns a hyphen, in my opinion.
Whoop,
Um, sorry, I had to
whoop.
give,
Wait, swip, swip.
yeah.
Not whoop, swip.
Uh, um, I think First Night is of a very, very, very good Batman comic book that people need to. If you're a Batman fan, you have to read and buy. I think it's worth buying physically. The art alone is good to have and sit down with it and deserves to be read the
Talk
way
to
it
it.
was.
Share a meal with it, you know?
Yeah, like like it is so good that and Jurgens is such a good writer and honestly, like I was very impressed. I just came away impressed all the way
Mhm.
around, and I hope we get more. I'm assuming we are. I don't know if it's been announced or not, but
That's a good
um,
point. I was gonna bring up at some point too, is I think they could totally make this its own little series and just
oh
do
for
it in,
sure, every couple of
like
years,
three,
whatever.
yeah, like
Yeah,
next year do another three, or this year, three
yeah,
book, 3 issue series and do the next chapter, the follow up or whatever.
yeah.
Like this could be a series, and that'd be
I
only if they do it in Black Label format and
yes, that
and
was
all
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I would say that the Black Label format and DC has just been killing it with its publishing line. I mean, you're talking about the Black Label, I think has been a success. I've really enjoyed a bunch of the Black Label books I've gotten. I like both the non-traditional, like the magazine format we got here, but I also love, you could say the oversized format. I also love this regular single issue, regular,
Yeah,
format Black Label books. Give me all of them. Like I really enjoyed what they're doing, and they've created their own little niche of a little more of a serious, more of adult content. And I hate saying it like that, but like just it gives a different vibe, right?
yeah.
And I think this is a great example of why you're using that label to the fullest. And I think that that's great. So yeah, like with DC's killing it, man. As a Marvel zombie, I can fully say they're killing it, and I think First Night is a great example of why you need to have Black Label without being like super ridiculous over the top to a point where you're like exploitation. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we could swear in a comic. Every other word's gonna be a swear word. Or we could have naked women in our comic book. Here is a bunch of naked women. Like, or we could chop off heads. Here's a bunch of chopped heads. Like, no, it does
I
handles
think all
everything
that
in the
sounds like
context
a
of the
great
story.
comic book. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, fair enough. But
Okay.
like, yeah, I just think that this book is a great example of why the Black Label exists and why it needs to keep existing and why people need to read it. It's a great Batman story. Will it be one of the best Batman stories in the last 10 years? Time will tell. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it is, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I echo a lot of what you said. I hope they do another uh First Night story. I'd be there. This I think this is a really good story, really good setting, character work, the specifics of the story, as far as like the villain angle. Like I said, it's not bad by any means. It's not like A plus. Oh my gosh, but like I like it. But overall, with the book, though, everything else with the book I think really works, and I think it is definitely a highly recommended. You don't have to do much history going into it. Like
Yeah,
just read it.
nothing.
Like it's
Yeah,
a
read it.
complete 3 chapter Batman story that you can hand to somebody that's not really all that invested in comics or something, and they'd get a lot out of it, I
Yeah,
think.
exactly.
Because it's pure it's pure Batman. Like in the
Yeah,
end, it's like that's pure Batman. That's why anybody who likes Batman could pick it up and read it. So,
yeah, yeah,
Paul
exactly.
Herman,
Yes, sir.
thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you, and no thank you to Pete Vera for saying this book is bad. So don't listen to Pete Vera. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Whoa, them
That's what
there's
Pete said.
fighting
Pete was
words.
like, "No, this
Them
book
there's
sucks." I'm like, Pete,
fighting
you're
words.
insane, dude. Like, I'm
Yowzas.
like, just go read some Tom Taylor comics or something. I don't know.
Which he is, and he's very
Which he is.
happy
I'm
with
sure he's
the
like, "Oh,
Detective
this is so
Comics.
good. Ram V's terrible, but I love Tom Taylor. Tom Taylor is so good." Blah 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 blah.
He never said Ram V's terrible because he reads a lot. He reads a lot of Ram V and likes all of his work, which is why we were both excited for a detective and we were not fans. But anyways,
Dude, by the way,
we
New Gods
talked
issue.
about that for like
I
24 wrap up
listen,
episodes or something. So
listen. New Gods. By the way, issue 1, fantastic
okay, I'll
by
take your
Ram
word
V.
for
Super good.
it.
Super good, dude.
Paul, why don't you go ahead and plug away?
The Comic Binge YouTube channel. Go check us out there. We're doing a big old countdown to Superman movie right
Big
now.
old countdown.
Big old countdown. We already got like 4 episodes in where we're covering all the essential stories to read before the movie to get you hyped up, pumped up, get you ready for everything. We just did for all Superman for all seasons, Loeb and Sale.
Yeah,
That was a great reread. I hadn't read it in a long time. It was definitely hell. It actually was
love
better
that
this
book.
time. Yeah, great book. Way better than Long Halloween. Anyway, so I had to get that jab in
Shut
there.
the hell up, Paul.
I know. I'm
But do
sorry.
go on.
Yeah. So but we have like 4 episodes in. Go check them out. Like if you're getting pumped for Superman movie coming out in summer, I go watch them. We don't spoil a lot, but we go read the books, go watch the videos. They're a lot of fun. Superman experts all around. Michael Bailey, obviously the professor Chris Clow, Javi Trujillo, El Corazon as I call him. Yeah, we got my buddy Adam, who's he's kind of new to all Superman comic books, so it's a great person to have on for this stuff. Um, we're doing the next episode's going to be to get you all prepped up. President Luther.
Ooh.
So yeah, I'm telling you all, we're getting you ready. We're getting you ready for this movie, and I'm super super excited, and I can't wait to to get into it. So yeah, go check out the Comic Binge. Go subscribe. You can follow the Comic Binge over at Blue Sky. You can follow it on on Twitter, aka X. Follow me on X, formerly Twitter, whatever, at Herman22 with 2 N's, aka P Thug. But yeah, go check us out on Instagram, all that stuff. Just go follow us. Go check us out. Send a like. Say what's up.
Yes. Oh, okay. As for the Batman Book Club, follow on the social medias at the Batman BC for latest episode drops and upcoming episodes, sometimes even some giveaways. Subscribe to the YouTube channel because Pete and I, damn it, this year we're getting into no man's land. It's happening. If you want to support the show variety of ways you can do that. Like I said at the top, patreon.com/thebatmanbc, tpublic.com, type in TBBC for the Batman Book Club. But if you want to support the show and you don't want to spend any money at all, it's 100% A-OK. Easiest, quickest, most impactful thing you can do is rate and review the show. So however you listen to the show, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever, just go to the rate and review page, rate and review this show. The more reviews this show gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as all of us know, that word is panic. So, for Pete Thug, Paul Herman, I am Ryan Lauer. And until next time, read my Batman comics.